You're terrible.
It's been 10
All right, yeah, it's been 10 seconds.
Good, because I can't look at Sasha.
All right, 2015.
In the backseat of mom and dad's car.
Can everybody can everybody hear me? I don't feel like I can hear myself.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, dope.
Loud and clear.
All right, well, my 2015 movie I'm starting off with is MadMaggs. I almost said MadMaggs. Mad Max Fury Road.
Great movie.
So, it was bomb. I fucking love Tom Hardy. I love Charlize Theron. And as action movies are concerned, like I'm not a
Top of the line.
Yeah, top of the line. I'm not a big action movie person. Like I'll watch action movies, but they're never my favorite. But fuck, that was a good movie to watch. It was bomb. It had a dude with a guitar riding on top of a car. So damn cool.
Who looked like he was out of Silent Hill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those characters that were on that specific car looked like they were from Silent Hill.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the villain, I don't remember his name, but he, scary looking dude. But
I always confuse the director of this movie with George Romero. What's the last name? He's a very famous. Yeah, he's
He made the original.
yeah. He made the
Yeah.
original Mad Maxes. I just
It starts
cannot.
with an
George
H.
Miller.
George Miller.
George
that's right.
Miller.
Yeah, he's got a forgettable last name. That's why.
So good.
He has a basic last name.
Yes.
Sorry, anybody. That's
Basic ass
Miller.
Millers out there. I mean, Miller is a basic last name.
It is. It very is, yeah.
It's like
not
the
as basic
village
as Smith.
They're both village occupations from like the 12th century.
There's some
A Miller and a Smith.
brilliant Millers. Look at Frank.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll get to him in a
Oh
little.
yeah,
yeah,
that's
man.
not up for grabs. But yeah, now I'm trying to look up George Miller on IMDb.
Immortan Joe was the villain.
That's right.
He was a creepy
That
fucking
guy.
thing.
Like I'm a little upset because the only thing that I did not like about it was, I mean, it was Furiosa's movie by far. Furiosa's movie.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like they were going with that direction and they backed off. But now I hear that they're supposed to be making a new one that is with Furiosa, but Mad Max. But Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron didn't like working together. So who knows what's going to come up from that whole thing. I wish they would make another one.
Yeah, for being titled Mad Max, Max really wasn't in it much.
Yeah.
Or didn't have much to do, I guess.
No. He was just like,
Yeah, but that role. Not saying Tom Hardy was the best pick for it, but he certainly was an exceptional decision. But acting wise, you didn't need to be the best actor to be that role, I don't think, because lines of dialogue in that movie are, I think I can count them on two hands.
Probably,
and
yeah.
Tom Hardy's got, I'm not saying he's not a great facial actor and body language actor, but he's really good when he taps into dialogue. And he was still a perfect Max Rodatansky, I think is his last name.
Yeah.
I never remember that last name either, but he was still the right choice. But he didn't bring any of why you love Tom Hardy into that role.
Yeah.
no. And the cinematography in that movie was fucking incredible.
Yeah, through the roof.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The fight sequences going back and forth on the pole vaults
Yes,
Right,
from
well, so much
vehicle
of that
to
was practical
vehicle.
effects too. Like they were actually
Yeah,
doing
it was all
that.
rooted.
Yeah.
There's no CGI
Yeah.
in that movie.
Oh, it's so good.
The tornado was that they were saying that the scene with the desert tornado was like.
Oh yeah.
The scene with the desert tornado, the storm, was one of the very few. I think that was just a handful of
Yeah, I
CGI
forgot
things
about
that
that.
we had. But yeah, George Miller was obsessed with doing practical
Yeah.
effects, where he's
And it
throwing
shows. I mean,
these people
it
across
works.
trucks and stuff. Yeah.
Well, didn't they have like Cirque du Soleil performers
Yeah.
like actually up on those poles and stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I
that
mean,
movie,
it's crazy.
it got rewarded for all of that. I think it did win a lot of academies.
yeah.
It was
Yeah, it
nominated
did.
for Best Picture too,
It was.
which
yeah.
was
And I had
an
no
interesting.
interest in seeing it when it first came out. I was like, this Mad Max. I didn't know. But I had so many people from different backgrounds and interests and just all over the place going, oh, this movie's fantastic, that I was intrigued. You know, I had to go see it. And, of course, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, definitely top 3.
it was a
Number
hard
3.
R too. It was a hard R. I like hard R action movies.
Yeah.
it was unapologetic.
Yep.
Yeah. And Oliver agrees.
Oliver agreed, yeah.
Okay.
The only cosign you need, Maggie.
Yeah. Oh well, then never mind. What I'm gonna say.
Oh,
Oh, are we
Here's-
going to go this way instead?
Whatever you guys want to do. You want to go?
Yeah.
next?
That's
Okay.
fine. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It would make sense because I'm gonna play off what you just said. I'm co-signing on this because I have a tie Are we allowed to do ties, Max?
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought about doing it. Yeah.
Break the rules.
Okay, damn it. Yeah, I have a tie for 2015 for number 3. It's between Mad Max and Sicario. You know, and with Mad Max,
Nice.
again, I loved it's old school filmmaking brought for this generation. Like you said, the practicality of the special effects, the stunts. They don't even, you know, what George Miller did. He reminded us of what an amazing filmmaker he was, and he still kicks ass. So, you know, I love that movie. It was Furiosa's movie. So what? It was a great movie, and it deserved the Oscar nods. The other movie is Sicario. I didn't care for the sequel. Me and Max argued about that for a while, but I love the first Sicario. The narrative there, it was very adult. It was dark. It was unapologetic. And it was unconventional. It wasn't like anything else out there. If someone else would have gotten their hands on the script of Sicario, they would have made it faster paced. They would have made it more superficial action. This was a grown-up movie.
That was my director of the decade who helmed that one. So, yeah, Denis Villeneuve, he continued his trajectory pretty strongly with Sicario. And I don't think you're going to be the only person to talk about that one, Miguel.
Good. Because he's so consistent. I mean, what did he do after that?
Oh, you want to know?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it in the next year.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of there's a couple of directors who are just all over this decade and stand out from the rest of the pack. And it's clear to see why when we mention some of these movies.
Yeah. So that's my time.
I know the other movie you're talking about.
Yeah, well, spoiler alerts, Maggie.
We'll get
I know
there.
the MadMaggs podcast is notorious for spoiler alerts, but we're gonna.
Well, if it makes me, I don't know what it is because I don't remember. I know that for almost every other freaking year, he was coming out and kicking ass with something
nonstop. And we'll get to Blade Runner even later in the decade
That's
too.
absolutely
which is,
one of my choices. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my tie for 3. What's yours,
Nice.
Heather?
Well, I was thinking about rearranging my list, but I got to give Fury Road my number 3 as well. I loved this movie.
Wow.
Let's keep it
Yeah,
up. Keep it up.
I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised by it. I mean, it is an all-out action movie, but there's also a great story there and a lot of heart for being such an action-packed or action-oriented movie. So, yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah,
It made me go back and watch all the other Mad Max movies.
Yeah, something I forgot to add too is that I think
Tina
it's
Turner.
So where do you think it's the best Mad Max movie after having watched them all?
Yeah,
I do,
think
because
so.
Road Warrior is awful.
Road Warrior's awful.
Yes, the first one.
It does not replay well.
It
Like
doesn't.
growing up, I loved it,
Right.
but going back to it, it just
It's
doesn't.
not
It takes a
good.
while to get
Yeah.
going. There is the first half of the movie is sort of like an origin story from comics. Like you have to go through the whole Max's family emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
you
lot of
do.
build up, so it's not a very Mad Maxy feel until about maybe like the 75-minute mark. But when it gets going, it
I don't
gets
know.
going.
I just thought it was a rough watch.
Okay.
I liked the second one, and we actually have not made it to Thunderdome yet.
Ah.
We bought them all. We haven't watched it.
Thunderdome's a trip.
Yeah.
It is.
So what's your number 3?
Number 3, and honorable mention for me was Mad Max, and this I just want to say that I considered a tie for this one, and I didn't know if they were allowed, but now that I do, Mad Max is tied for what I'm going to talk about at number 3, but we've talked about Mad Max enough. So next up is the isolated number 3 for me, which is The Invitation. This may be under a lot of radars, never heard of before, but you should have heard of this movie, and if not, please go see it. It's one of the movies that you kind of, if you're a cinema buff, you want to see because it's unpredictable. It is dissectable. It is a mind trip, and the acting is top tier from everyone. There was a similar movie to this as far as the environment is concerned earlier in the decade. We talked about Coherence.
Yes, it reminds me of it. Too.
Yeah, it is very vibey with Coherence, except there's no sci-fi element to it at all. And without giving away anything of this movie, because it's one of the ones that you should experience unfold in front of your eyes on the screen. Yeah, it is. It is a deep look into conversations between people and how time can affect different personalities, and coming back to revisit some old friendships and old people and ex-wives in particular in this movie. You don't really know what has happened in those people's lives
I think you can
they
say the first act plot of it.
Okay, yeah, the first act. Thanks. because it's tough to not talk about the movie. So this movie starts off with our main character, Will, driving with his girlfriend at the moment to his ex-wife's house because he's been invited. He's received an invitation.
Dinner party.
To a dinner party of old friends getting back together again. And as soon as Will steps foot into this lavish, very upscale home that's like in the Malibu hills somewhere, he notices intricacies and differences because he used to live in this home with his wife, ex-wife now. And so he notices all these little differences in the environment that he helped create. And the differences intrigue him a little bit, and they sort of lead him on this putting together detective story of what has happened to my wife. And we see some retrospect as to what happened to his wife when he was with her, and that's all harrowing stuff. And everything that he's seeing happen in front of him should be pointing towards his wife being an improved, sort of rejuvenated and born-again person, human being. And for the most part, she is, but then we're introduced to the only people that are strangers at this dinner party. And it turns out that these strangers have been a big part in his ex-wife's life since he left. And these strangers are into some interesting stuff that I won't spoil.
Yeah.
And that's
Sounds
number
interesting.
3, the invitation. It is a honed-in sort of realistic coherence with some dark stuff. Yeah.
Well,
Logan Marshall Green, underrated actor of the decade.
Nice.
Logan Marshall Green.
All right.
well, I stayed away from Fury Road, figuring you guys would talk about Fury Road. Number 3 for me was The Water Diviner. Anybody see that one? Russell
No.
Crowe.
The water what?
Diviner. Yeah, it's a story that kind of came up. It's an Australian story, essentially. These guys were going back through the history after World War I on the island of Gallipoli. There was a huge battle there, lots of lives lost. And anyway, there's
I
a
see why
note.
you like this one already.
Right?
It's
Yeah.
historical.
I know.
It's
Yeah,
entrenched
there's a
in-
his
note
wheelhouse.
from one of the officers there that some guy just showed up from Australia looking for his 2 boys. And so they did some research trying to figure out if who that person was. They couldn't figure it out, but they kind of built this movie along that premise. So Russell Crowe, I think, directed this as well.
Oh, nice.
So there is a little bit of controversy in it. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute, but it's really kind of a good story. Essentially, he has 3 boys. They're in the army. They all are fighting in the same regiment. They're on that island, and during the battle, it's assumed that all 3 are dead. And it's 4 years later now, and his wife, is stricken with all the grief, commits suicide, so he's kind of left alone. And it's at that point he decides he's going to go to Turkey, Gallipoli, and try to find his boys so he can bury them next to his wife. And so the story kind of goes from there as he's traveling to this country he's never been to. He's getting to an island that civilians can't get to. He befriends a guy that's in the Turkish army that's there helping the English recover bodies on the island 4 years after the war. And there's a little bit of a look into the sectioning out of the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I. Now, some of the controversy here is that the Turks are kind of portrayed in a good light, I guess, a light that really is misrepresentative of all the atrocities that they did, in the Ottoman Empire. The Armenians specifically are one of them. The Greeks, I think. But this, as he's on the island, he does find 2 of his boys. Learns that one of them might still be alive, and so the rest of the movie is him trying to track down his 3rd son to find him pretty alive. And it's a slow movie. It's drama, but I thought it was pretty good. It's not normally something I would have found myself watching, but sometimes I'll just be kicked back on a Saturday or Sunday flipping through movies. This is why I still like cable, and I don't really care much for streaming as much, but I'll find
Sometimes
something
you end up
that's...
with this, and sometimes you end up with Jurassic Galaxy.
Yeah, Jurassic Galaxy is its own set of greatness. Don't
It's
you
not gonna
dare
make the
say
list.
it.
That's
It
for
won't, but it has its own set of greatness.
Fair enough.
So yeah, good show. I thought anyway. I don't think Rotten Tomatoes
Thought favorably of
thought
it.
a whole lot of it, but sometimes that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. My second movie is a comedy. It is Spy with Melissa McCarthy. This is
It's fun.
one of the only comedies that I was laughing hysterically watching. I think I watch Melissa McCarthy movies with my mom and my dad a lot because they love her. But I think Miguel and I actually went on this movie. But I feel like this is Melissa McCarthy at her best. Everybody in it is so great. Jason Statham plays the worst spy ever. And there's another guy that I'm absolutely going to butcher his last name that plays Aldo. Is Peter Serafinowicz. That's not how you pronounce it at all, but hey, I tried. But so he is absolutely hilarious. And I fucking love this movie so much. Like, I want to watch it right now. Like,
I still haven't watched it. I bought it and I have not watched it.
Wait, didn't I let you borrow it?
It's
No,
definitely a good
no,
comedy.
not that one.
Oh my
Funny.
god.
That's what I've heard, which is why we bought it.
Funny.
Oh my gosh. Like, they're... And Rose Byrne
I'm so happy
plays...
it's mentioned.
Rose
it's a good
Byrne
movie.
playing a absolute bitch in this movie is so good.
Is Jude Law in this too?
Jude
Yes,
Law's
it is.
in it.
Oh,
Like,
I'm in,
Allison
totally.
Janney's in it. Like, it has a great cast. And
Nice.
everybody is just fucking hilarious.
Kudos. I mean, there's very few movies. I think I've told you this. That I'm actually laughing out loud in the theater. Like, I was fucking rolling when this movie came out in the theater. And she's hit or miss, but I mean, it was so.
Yeah, I mean, with Melissa McCarthy movies, you get, like, sometimes you get good jokes from her movies, and sometimes they don't land very well.
Yeah.
You didn't watch
I thought we were going to do
And-
without any Ghostbusters references for this
Yeah.
best of the decade talk.
And then, or she does, like, where she's, she plays a flat lady, so they make, fat jokes.
She's an oaf.
Yeah, she's an oaf, it's just, so it's not super funny, but in Spy, I mean, she uses everything
Yeah.
to her disposal, and I love this movie.
I'd be hard pressed to name a better Melissa McCarthy movie of the decade for sure.
Like,
I think Spy is the standout when it comes. Well, maybe The Heat. The Heat was pretty good too.
See, I didn't like The Heat that much.
I
and
liked Identity Thief, which I'm sure Morgan did too, because it's Jason
Jason
Bateman.
Bateman.
Jason Bateman.
Jason Bateman. I also Life at the Party I thought was really
That was
funny
good.
too. But
This is the
Life
most
of the Parties are best.
rewatchable one. I feel. I've
Yeah.
seen Spy 3 times, and I don't watch comedies unless they really make me laugh more than once. So
Anybody watch Tammy?
No.
yeah, I watched Tammy with my.
It's a little
yeah,
more
Yeah.
serious, I guess. A
Yeah,
little bit.
I feel like this one is a standout one. Live at the Party is a standout one too, but
It has
I
a lot of
feel
heart.
like it
that
does.
one.
But nothing hits like Spy, man. Like when it comes to Melissa McCarthy, that shit is just that movie is gold. It is straight gold.
Nice.
And if you hate it, I feel bad for you. Like, this shit is hilarious. Like, I want them to do another movie so fucking bad. And 50 Cent comes out of nowhere. Like, that. It's just. I'm just laughing
Shout out to
about
50
it.
Cent.
Yes. 50. Yeah, it's just gold. I love it. That's all I have to
Nice.
say about
I'll
it.
have to actually watch it. I want to.
Listen, can I watch it with you?
Sure. Yes.
It is one of those movies. It's one of those movies that when you know the funny parts and you watch it with someone who's never seen it,
Stare at you. even
you're
though I know you
staring.
don't like it.
You're
Nice.
staring at out of the corner of your eye to see if people are laughing at the parts you know are funny.
I know.
Yep.
So whenever you see me staring at you,
Okay.
you
All
better
right.
stop laughing.
Okay.
Wait. Your turn.
Okay. My number 2 is The Invitation.
Dang.
Wow.
Yes.
All right, you guys didn't get to see the dap, but there's a
There
dap
was a
there.
dap, for
Yeah,
sure.
it fucking was. I remember watching this movie, and right after I saw it, I wanted to call people
Oh yeah,
because
dude. And just tell them the invitation. You got to watch it now.
You just got to watch
Nice.
it right now.
Oh my god, yes.
Because I remember, I actually, you were the only people that I wouldn't shut up about. I wanted Maggie to see it so bad.
Told me
Mhm.
over and over, like, hey,
And
let's
finally we
watch
got
a
to
movie,
watch
babe.
it.
Let's watch The Invitation.
Well,
I'm like,
because much like you guys host dinner parties, and you guys have groups of friends that you conversate with
We could really,
avidly. Yes, and this is the setting that's set in that movie.
It
very
really
well.
is. I love the setting of the movie. The first act really pulls you in. I remember looking over. I was at the edge of my seat in the first act. Like, what's going to happen? Well, is she going to kill him? Is she going to say that she's pregnant? Is she going to say this or that? Because it's weird.
Are they aliens? Are they going to turn into reptile.
Yeah, because any one of us would feel this way. If one of our exes said, "Hey, I'm having a dinner party. Would you come?" and bring your current girl.
6 years later,
Yeah,
or whatever.
and it would be a little awkward, but also very interesting.
Mhm.
What is going on? What is she expecting? And the movie unfolds and it plays out like an onion
Yes.
or a puzzle put together. And when the third act hits you in the freaking mouth, when you figure out what's going on with him, you're like, oh shit. So, and I don't want to give anything away, but it's fun and it's dark and it's creepy, but it's not a fun movie. It's a sad movie. It's a good, smart, dark movie. That by the time it's over, I feel like I wanted to watch it again, and I wanted to tell everybody and their mother about it.
I just thought of a good description for the first half. It feels a lot like Get Out feels.
Yeah,
the first
good.
the first half is like
Just kind of uneasy, and you know something's going
you know
on, but you
something's
don't know what it is.
wrong,
off.
and you have a couple of guesses as to what it might be, but you know you have to. And this is what builds the tension of watching this movie is you have to wait for the movie to get to it. You know you got to wait for it too. Even though you want it to like come out and show you what it's all about, the movie sort of drags you along little piece by piece so that you can put together the whole puzzle in your head, because Will, the main character, is doing the same thing in the movie.
Yeah.
And he's putting together these pieces, so you're sort of at his mercy as well of putting together what the hell's going on.
It really is.
Nice.
It
is on Netflix, by the way.
It is an
I
amazing
will watch it tonight.
movie. Amazing
I'll watch
movie.
it again. Yeah, so I really hope you guys watch The Invitation. Everybody's listening, watch that movie.
And even after you watch it, make sure you come back for future episodes. Like, don't
Right.
let that movie steer you away from from this table, because it has the potential to make you look at situations like that in a different light. Because
damn right it does. Yeah.
we say this is a safe place on this podcast, but in this movie, it is not a safe place, and
No.
that's probably saying too much. But anyways, watch it.
You'll see what happens. You will not be disappointed. I feel very confident saying that.
Cool.
Okay. So what's your number 2?
So my number 2 is almost my number 1, but I had to just edge it out a little bit. But it's Ex Machina.
Ooh, yeah, it's good
Great movie. I thought all the performances were stellar from sort of up and coming people at the time. You know, some of them, I think all of them have been in Star Wars now. But
Right.
Alicia
I don't know that's a good
Vikander
thing.
has been in Star Wars.
oh, maybe not.
And she's
No.
been in great.
Lots of other
her
things,
career
yeah.
took off
Tomb
from that
Raider.
movie. Yep.
Yes.
Oscar Isaac and the guy that played the head of the
Yeah.
New Order, First Order.
Yes.
Oh, he's such a good actor.
I know, but I just thought, I don't know. It was a great movie. I
Yeah.
loved every second of it.
Awesome
and
movie.
I don't know. I can't really go into too much detail. I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't remember all the plot points necessarily, but I
Is that
love
A24?
Is it?
Was it?
Dang,
That's one of their good
Wow.
ones.
that's like one that I didn't have them pinned as being behind this, because it does seem a little more mainstream than A24.
Am I wrong, babe? Can you look it up for me?
I'm pretty positive it's A24.
I felt like
I honestly don't know.
it feels like a more mainstream A24.
It does feel like a more mainstream A24. It got a theatrical release to like 2,000 plus theaters, so that's not very A24-ish.
No, it's not. I have friends that are pissed because they didn't see the last 2 A24 movies because they live in Bumpkin, West Texas.
Is that all you have to say about Ex Machina?
Honestly,
Heather?
it really
It is. It is
It is
A24. baby.
Crazy.
What else is
Honestly, it is because like it's been a while since I've seen it, so I don't necessarily remember all the individual.
Well, don't you
points,
worry about a
but-
thing, Heather,
Okay, great. I
because
will leave it up to
I'm next
Sasha.
up, and my number 2 is Ex Machina.
There we go.
Nice.
Directed by Alex Garland, starring a whole slew of folks who, at the time, like Heather said, were not as well known as they are now, and this is a movie that was a launching pad for them.
For sure.
This, to me, is one of the more important movies of the decade as far as the subject material discussed in it, because this came out in 2015. It was originally filmed in 2014. I admittedly, Heather, you saw my list last week and saw that I had it on the wrong year and said, hey, move that around to 2015.
I knew we were going to talk about it, so
And
it had to
last-
be the right year.
Helped you out.
Yeah, the last couple of years were a mess in as far as my ordering is concerned. This movie it would be on my top 3 if it came out in any year, because it talks about things that we are having to deal with now as a society in real time and in the real world. So if you don't know what Ex Machina is about already, it is Oscar Isaac's character plays a very Zuckerbergian sort of character who lives an isolated life and has created this tech empire for himself. And he hosts this weird contest. This is all addressed in the first 5 minutes. And the contest is, I forget what it's about, but it's basically to invite one lucky programmer to his refuge for a week and to see, to get a glimpse of this top secret tech project that he's working on. The top secret tech project that he's working on ends up being an artificial intelligence body and mind that has been built through the aggregation of data and internet searches. This is in 2014. This is post Edward Snowden, but still a sensitive topic for common everyday Americans to digest and accept. Yes, still coping with in 2019, but in 2014 it was even it would get you the tinfoil label if you suggested it. And this movie tackles it head on and says that the elite billionaires out in the world are bored of what they've done to amass their fortunes, and the new threshold for them to break through is aggregating all of the data that exists out there to come up with their own personal versions of living human beings that they can use to, albeit maybe improve the human condition in some regards, but not in Oscar Isaac's case. He has different agendas, and that's the stuff that I won't get into because the movie deserves to be experienced. But it is a harrowing look at the possibilities of what technology can bring and what they've brought to your front door already, because you have to deal with them. You've got the Alexa in your house, in your bathroom, and all these things. And if you're okay with giving Alexa all the information about your exciting life and what you ate for dinner and what you're watching on Netflix, then you should be okay with what comes next. And that's what Ex Machina sort of tackles. Before it was comfortable to talk about these sorts of things.
Right.
And a movie that I don't know exists if Edward Snowden's disclosure doesn't happen 2 or 3 years earlier, but that's a debate that for a deeper dive. So yeah, Ex Machina number 2, start to finish, engrossing and very, very important.
All right, so you know me, I gotta go nostalgia here. The rest of this year is nostalgia for me, and this will be a controversial pick, I know. But Pixels was my second favorite movie of 2015.
Can you say that one more time?
Oh, this is Adam
Pixels?
Sandler.
Adam Sandler comedy. So you know, essentially, you know, when Adam Sandler's a kid, you know, he's playing video games. This is early '80s, and he's in a contest, and Peter Dinklage is like the his opposition there at the video game tournament, and you know, Dinklage ends up beating him, but they end up sending like a tape of the video games on this probe that we sent out to space. So these aliens find this probe, and they interpret that as that's how war is for humans. So they
Sounds like an Adam Sandler.
yeah. So when they attack with a video game. Like Galaga, I think, kills something. Maybe that's the Taj Mahal. That's Galaga that just destroys the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, because
So-
the aliens just want to understand how human beings work, and
Yeah.
and video games over the last 30 years are a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, and you know it's you know you know they challenge them to a game of 3 you know phases here, 3 attacks. Centipede's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Pac-Man in the city with the large Pac-Man and the minis, Mini Coopers was pretty funny.
Uh-huh.
That's a whopping 16% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I think sometimes when
Morgan's
you're like,
the anti-Rotten Tomatoes.
He is, yeah.
I am, but I think sometimes with like Adam Sandler, when you have huge hits early, people just think anything you do after that's crap. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's,
there's
in
a
this case,
measuring
it's
stick.
not.
Mhm.
You know, it's some of the same crew, but I love Peter Dinklage's character in here. You know, he's essentially in jail for fraud, and they need to get him out of jail to help him defeat the aliens, and he's negotiating all this stuff to get out, like a date with who was he dating? Or who did he try to get a date with? Serena Williams. So, like, one of his conditions of release was he had to get him a date with Serena Williams. Anyway,
Kevin James is the president.
Kevin James is the president.
Holy shit!
Yeah, Michelle Monaghan plays like the semi-love interest with Adam Sandler, and she's hot. So it was easy.
I didn't
to watch.
hate Pixels when I watched it. The one time I watched it, it was entertaining because of the video game nostalgia.
Yeah, the '80s video game nostalgia.
It's
I
sort
just
of like
loved it.
it's a hybrid of
CGI was good.
Ghostbusters, Ready Player One, and Adam Sandler comedies. Basically, it's a hybrid of all those things.
Yeah. All right, Pixels, my 2.
Okay.
Nice.
So now we're hitting Maggie's number
Numero uno, MadMaggs.
All right. My number 1 movie is a super depressing movie. We go from a comedy,
Of course it is.
action comedy, to super depressing. I know that's all my number 1 picks,
Melancholy.
right?
Was it Melancholia too?
No.
It's the same as my number 1. Go ahead and say it.
Okay, so my number 1 movie is Spotlight. It's based on the Spotlight team from the Boston Globe on a true story of whenever they broke the Catholic priests
Yes.
molesting children. I think the reason why it's my number 1 is just the whole, like, watching the magnitude of the story come out, and as journalists, as they're going through it, and they're like, oh, they hear a story about a priest, and then they hear another one, and they're just like, okay, well, it's just a couple, and then they get with this, I don't really know his name, but they get with somebody who does research about priests and abusing children, and finds out, like, okay, what's your population? Well, you probably have at least 200 priests that are sexually molesting children. And the magnitude of just thinking about that, just in Boston alone, and the extent that the church goes into hiding it, is so scary. And
The church hides things.
What was the
Yeah.
what was the latency on this movie's release versus the real world release?
I believe it was 2003.
Okay, so it was like 12 years basically
Yeah.
of sort of putting this movie together. That shows you how dangerous the topic is.
Well, I think the ending is the absolute worst. Is that they, at the very end of the movie, they put up a list of every city where sexual molestation has been reported at a church, and it's hundreds of churches, like hundreds of cities, all around the world. So, I mean, I'm an atheist, and so I don't really feel bad about saying this. I kind of do it because my mom ever hears,
Right.
But so sorry, Mom and Dad. But going on, just to know that happens and that it's covered up all around the world. I mean, they just shift these priests from one church to another church, and they have houses for these priests that have a problem. They don't take them out of the clergy. They don't.
I learned
they
that
don't-
from X-Files Fight the Few, or the X-Files sequel, because
Right?
there is a mention of
Yeah.
this same topic in that, and the character there who was a convicted pedophile lives in one of these like sanctuary, like remote locations.
Yeah, and the police know about it and can't do anything because they said that the church owns Boston.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it
Can be the
It's-
church owns a lot of
owns a lot of cities.
East Coast cities, and even the influence is spread. Yeah,
worldwide.
it's a scary topic to talk about.
And one of the, I think it was the Archbishop at the time, they moved him to the Vatican and gave him a higher title in the Vatican.
Wow.
And it's so insane.
Well-
It's so insane to think about. And I'm not saying that all churches do this, but I'm just saying just the amount of the cover up and the discovery and seeing it all unfold and watching the movie, and they make a really good job of, like you're discovering this with them, and they're going to church. They're all about they grew up in church, and they go to school, or not school, they go to church on Wednesdays and Sundays, and you don't talk about anybody from the church, and here they're investigating, and they're don't want to believe it, and to go from 2-3 to 200,
epidemic numbers.
It's awful. And then they start talking to the victims, and the victims tell their stories, and one of them had a classmate that was with them, and he's like, the only reason why I wasn't molested is because I wasn't a part of the lacrosse team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hard too, because they focus a lot on the male the male children that grew up in broken homes because they were easy
vulnerability.
targets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just such a sad story, but it's true.
Yeah,
and it's true. That's what's horrifying, and this kind of stuff happens every day. But I think to see it on a scale like that and to get the attention that it got, even as uncomfortable as it was, it's a story that needed to be told and needed to be out there. And it's I watched it all the time when it came on HBO, as depressing as it was, because it was such a good story, such a not an easy watch, but just
didn't it win Best Picture?
It did win Best Picture that year, and the Spotlight team actually won a Pulitzer for that story too.
Oh, wow.
I mean, their last story, the Spotlight team at the Boston Globe only work on special stories. Like, they don't work on like everyday news.
Right.
They only specialize in focus stories. And their last story was about Aaron Hernandez from the Patriots that died in the jail. They did a assessment.
CT expose. Sure.
Yeah, and then they also did one about before that about Quiet Skies with the TA agents that are were basically following around regular people to
TSA.
Or not TSA, I'm sorry, but the
NSA?
no, I think actually it was
TSA.
The
Airport security?
it was like airport security, I think.
Huh.
They were like following around regular people to watch their movement, and they were doing a study on new surveillance equipment and doing a study, and they just followed around regular people.
NSA maybe.
So I think
It's one of those A's.
I know it's
There's a whole
one
ton
of
of them.
those. So I mean, they do a lot of stories. Quiet Skies. Yeah, TSA admits to Quiet Sky surveillance. Snarl zero threats.
Yeah, and those are just everyday folks. I know a couple of TSA agents. So yeah, I mean, on the topic of Spotlight, tough subject to tackle, and we always ask ourselves, how and why did these things develop? And we just got done talking about Ex Machina, and personally, I feel this is a power game that people play within the infrastructures that they decide that they want to be a part of, and similar to Zuckerbergs of the world, once your power reaches its limit within that structured organization, power is sort of an addiction for these types of people, and authority and the sense of authority. It doesn't just stop at what you can do within the church or within a tech firm, for example. It goes beyond that, and beyond that is some of the darker recesses of the human spirit, the human conscience, and just sort of the inverse of the best that you see in human beings is present there, and it I mean, that's just the law of polarity when it comes down to it. If you've seen the best in people, then know that the worst in people is a potential there. And it all plays to the power game of the Catholic Church and how long it's been around, and what it's trying to control and prevent from occurring within its walls, which is any new sort of thought or consideration or breaking from what got them into the level of power that they are currently in. And it's sort of it's tough to tackle, and it's tough to break through. Spotlight is one of those Pulitzer deserving teams, and the movie deserved what it got because more people need to know about the darkest stuff that's happening next door. And
Well, and I remember whenever the story came out, not very clearly, but I remember when the movie came out, I was like, oh shit, I remember this.
Mhm.
You know. So, but Miguel, I would like to hear your take on it, since it was also your number one, and you grew up Catholic. So
Yeah. Spotlight is my number one. I mean, without hesitation. It was 2015. I had I had a hard time discussing what number 3 or 2 was going to be.
Mhm.
I absolutely knew what number 1 was going to be. And I like to think that this movie struck chords with me, even if I'm not a recovering Catholic, which I am. I'm also an atheist. I'm very secular, as you can imagine. I think the reason this movie struck chords with me, not just because I'm a recovering Catholic, but because I love movies where we get to see the press in the better light. We get to see journalists being heroes.
This is post Newsroom, I want to say.
Oh, absolutely.
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was like 2012-ish,
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah. Again, that's another example.
Yeah.
I always said that.
So good. I love that show.
No, I love where we get to see examples where journalists are they're indispensable when it comes to our democracy.
Yeah.
Or what we think is our democracy.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
very compromised, laughable, representative republic we live in. We fucking depend on journalists for things to move and to change. And it's not just when it comes to the government. It's when it comes to, like you said, these establishments that are so used to power they become complacent, do perverse things. So, yeah, I love investigation movies. I love movies like Zodiac. This movie, not to trivialize people that died during the Zodiac era, but this movie is so important and so relevant because it's for our generation, this has been happening forever. Not just decades, it's been happening for centuries. And for this to break like it did, thanks to the Spotlight team, people never would have known about it on a national level. It was because of them that this was taking place. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember being a kid in the 90s and hearing about these kind of stories.
There were definitely rumors abound, and there were isolated cases in smaller publications that were made known. Yeah.
As someone who was Catholic, I knew of the stories, but I didn't imagine it breaking out on a national level like it did.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
So this story needed to be told. The movie needed to be told about what heroes these people were. It wasn't ever easy for them. I don't know if have you guys all seen Spotlight?
I have not.
Okay,
No.
God damn it, you guys need to watch this.
but I followed the breaking of the news story pretty
Yeah.
closely, and for me it was a culmination point. It was sort of the inevitability of that, and that's maybe because I knew a little bit more about the smaller isolated stories, and in the last decade before that, there were plenty of folks that were speaking up on what was going on within the Catholic Church.
One
but
of my favorite
it didn't seem
movies
like their
is
voices were being heard.
From '96, Primal Fear.
Ah, yes, there you
And
go.
that touches on it.
Sleepers.
Yeah, Sleepers is another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a handful of films and books and news stories that weren't scared to go where Spotlight sort of pushed the walls down and said, "Okay, we're going to knock the door down on this," and maybe deservedly so because it was happening more prevalently in
the East
Boston.
Coast and Boston.
Yeah,
right.
so
Right.
it makes a lot of sense versus hearing one testimonial from a Midwest Catholic church of
Somewhere
one
like,
individual
in Indiana, or
not to
some random ass
minimize
place.
not to minimize their stories or anything like that, but it wasn't observable on a mass scale like it was for these folks on the East Coast. But yeah, Sleepers I think takes place in Boston, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so
it
there
does.
you go.
Primal
And Primal
Fear,
Fear,
I
I
think,
want to
is
say
somewhere on
takes
there.
place
Yeah.
in
I think
Boston.
so.
Who's in Primal Fear?
Richard Gere and Ed Norton.
Oh,
watch
it's
that.
so good.
So the writings were on the wall, and it's pretty important to take that into account into stories of this magnitude and this level. Is that the writings are typically always on the wall, and we're not willing as a consensus to address them because the topics are not they don't meet our level of comfort, and we, in a way, we sort of rely on, like Miguel said, journalism to do it for us, to ease us into the tolerance level as a people to deal with this. But movies do a great job of breaking that tolerance level down early on and putting what you may think is a fictional story or based or inspired by true events, and you're watching stuff that actually has deeper pertinence. And this is back to the Ex Machina stuff. If you watch that movie in 2014, it's alarming, it's uneasy, and you don't want want to look at another Alexa again. And just like that, some of these older movies that touched on Catholic priests, not the right. Don't worry about the right. I think you're okay with that. A bad movie, but
Primal Fear it took place in Chicago.
in Chicago.
So Primal
okay.
Fear was it also have to do with the priesthood?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Altar
Yes.
boy
Watch
kills
that.
a priest. I
Yeah,
think.
Ed Norton plays an
okay,
altar
okay.
boy, and he's accused of killing the archbishop.
That's wow.
And
Holy shit.
he has multiple personalities,
And the
this is
reason-
maybe the
yeah.
best acting from Ed Norton I've ever seen. It is
Really?
so good. Yeah,
I got a
25th Hour
and
is
this
pretty
is
good.
it is. It's from like '96. It's an older
How
movie,
did I miss this
but it is
movie?
really
it's my
good.
eras. I was.
and it's
I was obsessed
You were
with
into
the 90s.
Michael Bay action movies
Right?
in the
No.
90s, just like me.
No.
and this is very much a
That's sad.
detective story. Like Richard Gere is his lawyer, and he's trying to figure out
Yes.
what's
Yeah,
going
I
on.
gotta
It's
check.
it's
It's got a
good
shocking.
watch.
It's a shocking twist ending.
It does,
too.
yes.
All right, we're watching that this weekend. But yeah, we're talking about this. The topic of this is actually the best movies of the decade. We keep talking about how important the subject
Mm-hmm.
matter is of this movie.
Yeah.
When it comes to the movie itself, Michael Keaton is fucking amazing in this movie. I mean,
I love that dude.
Did he?
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo is the best part of the movie, in my opinion. I mean, there is no weak link when it comes to the acting. The directing is perfect when it comes to just the timing and
Who
the pace.
directed this?
Not someone with a big name.
Oh.
No.
Let me look.
And what have they gone on to do since then?
I'm.
Tom McCarthy.
Who else did he do? What did this kid do?
He has done. So he's directed The Station Agent 03, The Visitor in 07, Win Win in 11, The
Oh, he
Cobbler
acted.
2014,
That's a
Spotlight.
shitty Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, he's directed two.
The Cobbler.
He directed 2 episodes of 13 Reasons Why. He has 4. He has 4 movies.
Keep taking your shots.
This is good.
Keep taking your shots.
Hold on. I'm looking to see what he has written.
You know,
Uh,
Edward Norton. You know,
Christopher
Death to Smoochie. I
Yeah.
think was one of his best acting.
Death to
performances.
Smoochie is underrated
So,
acting.
This director acted in Pixels.
Ah,
Oh.
connection. We're
Right.
connecting.
So, and he also contributed to the movie Up, and he also wrote Christopher Robin as
Huh.
well.
Oh, it was such a sweet movie.
So he has 5 projects coming up that he has written, and
Okay.
4 projects coming up that he is directing.
None of which sound like they have the gravity of something like Spotlight.
No, I'd like for him to tackle another serious
Yeah.
subject because he seems to nail it really
Yeah.
well. He does. So, no, yeah. So that's without a doubt, Spotlight's my
Awesome.
number 1 pick. Definitely, everyone needs to check it out.
I do.
You will not be disappointed.
Oh, he does have a movie coming out with Matt Damon and Abigail Breslin.
Hello, what is that?
A father travels from Oklahoma to France to help his daughter who has been arrested for murder.
Okay, so that sounds like the Amanda Knox story
yeah,
somewhat.
it does.
He's
Could
also he's directing a Disney movie called Timmy Failure.
It sounds like
Mm-hmm.
boring.
Another
more
movie
pop.
he has doesn't have.
Well, shout outs to Tom McCarthy for or Thomas McCarthy.
Thomas McCarthy for killing that movie.
Yeah.
With that, I'm not going to make any. I don't like to make generalizations about anybody with that last name. Maybe he could relate to it.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
His other 2 movies does not have any actors attached to it yet, so I can't determine.
It's super interesting to hear opinions on that movie from 2 people from your backgrounds and where you are now when it comes to spirituality or where you're not for that matter. But I can't help but to wonder if all of these Catholic Church sort of the problems that have come to light and all of that have tainted the image, which in turn taints your connection with it, or if it's for completely different reasons.
Mine was. I mean, personal. Mine was way before this movie,
Okay.
but it sure as hell didn't help.
Exactly. That's what I was getting at.
Same. Yeah, I was pretty much a atheist as long as I can remember.
Okay.
My parents would take me to church. I didn't get it, and my parents were like, "Oh, we gotta practice it." We never, we never practiced it, so I didn't believe a
Super
lot of it.
interesting.
So I don't know. Yeah, I was never really super religious as long as I've
The
Yeah.
legs of the table are falling
No,
apart.
it's my chair.
Oh, okay.
Oh no.
Even worse.
Yeah. So so I don't. So I was always as atheist.
I gotcha. That's interesting because I feel the same way about church attending and being raised in a Catholic home in Canada as well. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, I'm not an atheist, so it's very interesting to see where the roads diverge. And I'm always interested in tapping into that. Maybe another podcast there, one of our 5,000 podcasts that we need to have. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, it's on Heather numero uno.
So mine is not nearly as heavy as that one, but it's What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, the movie.
Yes, the movie. So it
Heavy
actually,
if you're a vampire.
Right. It came out in 2013 in New Zealand, but it was released here in 2014, and then 2015 here in the U.S. So it's on this year's list. This is one of those movies that I just crack up at every part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a mockumentary of vampires if they were actually living today or whatever. 5
It's
years
kind of
ago.
scary, too. There's some scary stuff.
A little bit scary, but it's so fucking funny.
Yeah, more of a
I
comedy.
just
Yes.
definitely more of a comedy, but it's just so funny. It's a really smart comedy. Like a lot of the jokes they make, you have to think, and then you go, oh my god, and like they run into a pack of werewolves, and Rhys Darby is the lead werewolf, and he doesn't let them cuss, and he's like, are we werewolves or swearwolves?
Love it.
And it's just, I don't know, it's greatness like that, and like they can't eat real food, and so because they have to drink blood, of course they're vampires, and there's this great scene where the newly minted vampire in the story is like, oh, I'm gonna have a french fry, I've been craving these, they're so good, and he has one bite, and he's just like projectile vomiting blood, like just non-stop, and it's so funny. But there's just so many moments like that. This is one of those movies that I'll watch whenever it's on, which is kind of rare, honestly, but that is on, I mean. And I just crack up. And then, of course, I loved the series that came from it. That it's not the same characters, but it's the same creative team, and they do make an appearance in the show.
Yeah, the movie was that good enough to sort of warrant like an extended dive into that world. I remember seeing that movie, and it was a dark humor, and it was, I guess it's referred to as black humor when it comes to
I think
movies
so.
like that. Yeah, it's like it puts this serious setting and something dark with
Well, the effects are
vampires,
awful.
but
But on purpose.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
That's
like,
it's genius.
it is. It's just so funny. Like in the series, there's a scene where they all have familiars, and so Guillermo is in the series, and he's like holding his master up above his head, and they're looking in a mirror, and he's like, "Look, I'm flying," and just all this stuff because they don't have a reflection, and it's just like every vampire trope that you can think of, they basically make fun of. But it's just an amusing movie. I love it.
That's on our list too.
My number one is Sicario.
Nice.
Yep, and I could talk about this movie for a long time
Start the timer.
because it's really good. So, Sicario is a deep examination into, on the surface level, the U.S. versus Mexico, government versus lack of government, and the drug wars. That's all surface level stuff. Deeper level, this is an examination of power again, and the different levels of power and what it's like to be at the mercy of that power. And that's the trip that we get taken on, because Emily Blunt's character is, at the start of this movie, a very innocent, as innocent as you could be as an FBI agent, but she is a by-the-book, do-it-the-right-way type of character, and I'm sure there are a lot of folks in law enforcement and the higher branches of law enforcement that can relate to that character. They sign up for the right reasons, and they want to fight the right fights. Well, very quickly, she is thrust into the higher echelons of where that goes from there when it comes to law enforcement in the higher branches of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, all of this. And she's put smack dab in the middle of the drug war with Mexico after one of the maybe the best opening 10 minutes of a movie I've ever seen. The music, the tension that's built, the visuals, the unpredictability of that first 10 minutes is some of my favorite cinema all time. But fast forward to after that, she gets asked if she wants to be a part of a team that is going to go about it in their own way, recklessly, and not obeying any laws. And they're going to try to get some folks that... It's sort of a revenge movie because without giving too much away, they go after some folks that are responsible for some terrible things happening on American soil. And then another one of the most memorable scenes in the history of movies that I've ever seen takes place, and this is the escort scene through the cities of Mexico.
Oh, it's so intense.
Yeah, through the streets of, I want to say it's Mexico, and it's not Mexico City. It's a border town. It might be Guadalajara. Is it Juarez? Yeah, it might be Juarez.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So this is credit to Denis Villeneuve and the visceralness of his directorship in this movie, because we see the bouncing of the trucks, the crappiness of the roads, the bodies hanging from overpasses because of this drug war, the people standing in the streets watching everything, the Mexican police escorting the American feds. And then that's just the city. And then we make it to the border crossing that just ratchets up the intensity even more. I won't spoil that part for folks because it's just out of the park tense. And I remember seeing this movie in theaters, and at first I didn't think it was going to be an experience that was going to add anything that theatrically to the movie. But man, was I wrong, because there's just endless tension in this movie, built and built, and it reaches a precipice for all of the different characters. Josh Brolin's excellent in this movie. He's the he's the representation of American power, in my opinion, and American sort of, for lack of a better phrase, like the pride, the pride of the arrogance. Okay, Miguel, thanks for saying it. Yeah. The American
didn't want to say it.
The American arrogance that a lot of people don't like to address, and he represents it. And the get the job done by any means, and fuck everybody who's involved with it. We got a job to do, and that's commendable in this certain case. And Emily Blunt is again the innocent, and then you got Benicio del Toro, who's the X Factor, the wild card, who's got a backstory of his own. And that movie, I'm sure we'll argue about Sicario 2. And I understand why we'll argue about Sicario 2.
Yes, we will.
But there's no argument that Sicario gets a lot of... it's a very unique film experience. It portals you into a world that, again, you don't get the privilege of seeing firsthand. And I think from the shootouts in the drug tunnels to the drives through Juarez or wherever those took place, we see a lot of stuff in this movie that you would only get from experts if they were telling you firsthand stories. And that's what I want to see in movies more, is the stuff that I don't get to see as a human being. Yeah.
All right, well, my number one movie for 2015 was Straight Outta Compton.
Nice.
You got a timer on my 5 minutes and 8 seconds, buddy. That's not too bad.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It's time, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, Straight Outta Compton, again, nostalgia. I mean, I guess the first group that really gets it all started as far as gangster rap. They coined the phrase, or well, people talking about them coined the phrase of gangster rap.
Arguable, but yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I know, right?
Straight Outta Compton.
Oh, yeah,
Crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube. Sorry, I had to flex some Ice Cube chocolate.
I'm more impressed, Morgan, that you say this for nostalgic reasons.
Well,
so
you don't know much about Morgan, do you,
Right? Not at
Miguel?
all.
I'm probably like a freshman in high school when they're starting to really hit the scene. And this is, high school football. This is all that's playing in the locker room. And the first time as a young white urban kid hearing this thing, I don't know why, but I loved it.
Yeah.
Maybe it was some of the danger
This is
part.
NWA, right?
Yeah, maybe this is some of the dangerous part about it, or the there was a lot of fear associated with it. Like I hid this from my mom. I didn't want my grandparents
Sure.
knowing I listened to NWA.
Sure.
There was a lot of censorship stuff going on at this point in time. I don't think you get that feel anymore today, but back then it was kind of weird, and I think that added to really enjoying it. I wore out 3 cassette tapes with NWA.
Oh shit!
I loved every song on every album. But going back and watching the movie, in my mind as a kid, I thought that stuff lasted 5, 6, 8 years. I thought they were around a long time. But when you kind of go back through the movie, you go, man, that they really were not together for very long, and it was a short period of time that all of that
rise and
happened,
yep.
and there was a lot of infighting between all of them at some point. But man, I thought the movie was pretty well done. I think most of the people that were involved with everything thought it was pretty well done, except for the manager guy. I think he tried to sue them for the movie. Paul Giamatti, I think, plays that role. But like I said, nostalgia is just all the songs, all the performances. Ice Cube's kid played Ice Cube. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Great choice.
I'm a little surprised they didn't let was it Eazy-E's kid that wanted to play Eazy-E, but I guess I understand with that. But,
Yeah. I like that movie a lot. I didn't grow up with NWA. I was 5, 6 years old, so it would have been very strange had I grown up with NWA. But I certainly, as a rap and hip hop super fan, in my own opinion, I've revisited all of the NWA and Dr. Dre and Ice Cube discographies. One of the guys who I was always interested in learning more about was Eazy-E himself, because he passed on at too early of an age, and I didn't get a lot of background as to what his life was like growing up. And the thing about Eazy-E is he was not a rapper, and this movie does a good job of showcasing that, and showcasing that he was, still the charisma of the group and the life of the group. But he was the furthest away from. He was the most unready to be a rapper. He just wasn't. He wasn't there. And
that voice.
And the voice was enough to lead songs like "Boys in the Hood" and "Fuck the Police." I mean, the classic hip hop records. Yeah, and it was really cool to see his story
100
within
Miles
the movie.
of Running.
Yeah.
Although that
I'm
one
sure
is
you know
great.
him.
That's my favorite. 100 Miles of Running.
Yeah.
Did you watch the Defiant ones?
That's
it
the
HBO, I
Netflix
think?
documentary. No,
Really
I
good
have
too.
not.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Really good.
Yeah. We went into it watching because I think Marilyn Manson was in it a bit,
Mhm.
if I recall, and that's kind of why we watched it in the first place, and it was fascinating. The whole thing.
Director of Straight Outta Compton.
F. Gary Gray.
It was F. Gary
Oh,
Gray.
F.
God, I
Gary
didn't want to
Gray.
say it was
Yep.
because he's let me down as of late with
no.
stuff. But that's okay.
With stuff.
Well, Men in Black International is a piece of shit.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
And
did that?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Well,
Yeah,
sometimes you got to do the big budget movie just to
Sometimes you
do
do,
the big
but
budget movie.
Yeah, I mean, Steve
get other
Martin
things
does
going.
the Pink Panther too, so he can do Shop Girl.
well,
That's all. we
yeah,
all know
Duncan
that.
Jones did Warcraft. Anyway, there's a
Oh,
trend.
shit.
I like Warcraft.
Well,
so
there's
shut up.
Are you crapping on Warcraft?
Warcraft the movie. Yeah, I'm crapping on Warcraft the movie.
Nope.
It didn't make any of our list in 2018, I hope, or else that's going to be a long episode.
didn't.
2017.
It's 2016, sir.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh boy. So maybe we do get to Warcraft. Holy shit. We'll save that one for next time.
All right.
We're on honorable mentions now.
Honorable mentions.
And guilty pleasures. Yeah.
All right, so my honorable mentions was Sicario, which y'all have already touched on, so I won't go into.
Quite honorable.
And then The Big Short, which is about the big crash.
Economic
Yeah.
collapse.
Yeah, so that was really cool. The storytelling was really cool. Had a bunch of big name actors, and sometimes whenever you get a lot of big name actors with different stories
Chemistry's
following
off.
along, chemistry's off, or it doesn't flow really well together. You're less interested in one story, really don't care, and you want to go to another story. So
Mars Attacks.
yeah.
One of the most guilty pleasures.
But
Yeah.
Sorry.
But no, I thought that this was a good, cohesive movie, and it made sense. Like, everything that, just breaking down why the collapse happened, and just, like, the holy shit, how was this allowed factor throughout the whole damn movie, and one person got arrested.
Mhm.
Like, fuck, like that's fucking nuts.
So interesting in hindsight that came out the same year as Spotlight, because those were
Big stories.
those were big stories that had some latency in the real time. Economic collapse was 2008, so
like
yeah.
2015 is my year where a lot of movies that got nominated for Best Picture, I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, you know, I totally got.
Can't say that afterward. But
Yeah, I can't say that afterwards or kind of before, but anyways. And then y'all are gonna laugh at me, and there's no bias here. I know y'all are gonna say it, but it's this little movie called Maggie. With Arnie, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You couldn't find that
and-
DVD and prop it up at the store and take a picture.
No,
Okay.
couldn't find that Blu-ray at
It's a
the
pretty good
discount
movie, actually.
store.
Yeah, and
I like it.
Abigail Breslin. It's
so weird.
it's a zombie movie, but whenever the
What
people
is
get
it?
bitten by a zombie,
Three of us at this table have movies named after us. So you've got Maggie, you've got Morgan, which is a knockoff sci-fi version of like Alien, and then you've
Yeah.
got Heather. If you add the S, you've got a movie as well.
Yeah.
It is true.
Like
I
With
do.
Tom, with fucking Grease.
Right.
God damn it, brain fart from fucking hell.
It's okay.
John Travolta.
Yes, there you go.
John Travolta plays Saint Michael in
Yes.
a horrible movie.
We don't
Yeah.
have a Miguel yet.
Yeah.
No movie named Miguel.
but no, I thought
There's something.
There's some Brazilian.
You're
porn.
never gonna see
I
a
know, yeah.
Sasha movie, so
yeah,
Well, if you do, it'll be a female character.
yeah, or we
yeah, and it'll be misspelled.
Well, Morgan was, so
I know.
Sasha
that's,
can be.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
SASHA, and then it'll
Yeah.
be a piece of shit.
but no,
Or
Maggie.
Sacha, like Chris says.
Yes, but Maggie's a really cool movie. Like whenever you get bitten by a zombie, you don't actually turn for like a week or two, and so they get time to like process what's happening to them, and then some decide to kill themselves, and some are like, I'm gonna ride it out, and they're working on a cure, and so whenever you do get bit, like they're trying to run tests on you, and your family members are like, what are we gonna do? And so that was a really cool, interesting story that once you get bitten, you don't automatically turn like all these zombie movies. So you kind of get time to process what's going to happen to you.
Weird fucking casting for Arnold Schwarzenegger to be in that, but I loved it. Like,
Yeah, it's a really serious role for him, and it's a good father-daughter movie too.
All
Like,
of Arnold's
it's-
roles
it
are
is.
serious when you look back.
That is true.
oh, totally with Last Action
Conan.
Hero.
Collateral Damage, Last Action
He's a
Hero,
very serious person.
Eraser. I mean,
Yeah.
these
I'm so
take
sorry.
acting chops.
I was mistaken. I'm so sorry.
Although,
Junior.
Did you see him trolling Sylvester Stallone with the knife?
No.
Apparently, they're donating these signed knives to some charity, and so they've got Stallone's knife like mounted on this thing, and it's all pretty and signed, and Arnold comes in and he says, oh, this is so nice, and thanks for doing this, and he goes, but that's not a knife, this is a knife, and it's like twice the size.
One-upmanship.
So funny.
Very Arnold.
Yes,
of him.
yes, it's great.
Fucking love that.
And
Yeah.
then last honorable mention is Inside Out. I think one of
Oh,
Pixar's.
God, that movie's so sad.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't have to talk about it.
It's one of. I think it's one of Pixar's best movies.
Really?
I really do. I
I
think that all the thinking that goes into it, like have your core memories. How do they store your memories? What priority are they? Like they have like these little guys that just go around, and like all these memories are these little balls in different colors that are a different part of a memory that go with a core memory, and these core memories make up who you are. And basically the main character Joy gets out of the control room that they have with
Control
sadness.
room.
Yeah, like your core brain.
Yeah.
And they get lost in these memories, and they have to get back into the control room. I know. I'm talking too much about it, but it's
okay.
it's so good, and it's just a sweet movie, and it is sad, but it's so good. Just like how it's just nice to see how just everything is. I can't explain it. Like I can, but they're talking about my time. So
It's fine. It's your podcast. You do what you want.
But I mean, it's such a sweet movie, and I watched it again this weekend because I didn't have it on my list, and it was on, and I watched it again. I was like, this is such a good movie, and just so sweet, and all the characters are great. You got to get a little mini Office reunion because Mindy Kaling is in there,
Yeah.
Phyllis Smith is her last name. She's Phyllis Lappin in the series, but But yes, a little mini reunion there, and all like the voice acting is just incredible. But it's such a good movie. It's so sweet, so fucking sad at the same time too. But yeah, y'all, you just have to watch it.
It's good.
So I'm gonna talk about
Inside Out.
Reset the time.
Mine's simple. I mean, I like Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Oh, I did too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
loved
Thank
it.
God, you guys, have you seen that and such?
I have not, sir.
Great
No, sir.
movie.
It is
You
good,
Check
yeah.
that out. If you're interested in the Cold War remotely, it's
Oh, yeah.
an essential viewing. It's just that it's really
Okay.
really good, well
Yeah.
filmed.
There's some very intense scenes in it too, just with
For sure.
all the wall stuff going on.
That was a
Yeah.
Disney movie, was it not?
I don't know if it was.
I want to say that was a Disney movie.
Bridge of Spies?
Yes.
They might have produced it. They also produced Pretty Woman.
Yeah, right.
Pretty Women. So I mean, that tells you everything. No, it was a very. I can't say it's an underrated movie because it got the critical acclaim it deserved. I think what's his name won a fucking Oscar for it, the guy who plays the old man. in the
Mark
movie.
Rylance?
Mark. God.
Mark Rylance.
Mike Ryland. How do you say his name?
Rylance. Rylance.
However you say his name.
It's a Spielberg directed movie too.
It's Spielberg on his fucking A game.
Maybe that's
Spielberg,
what I'm
Hanks.
confusing it with, is just Spielberg instead of Disney.
Spielbergian, yeah. I mean, he's in his A game in this movie. It's a great movie. Spy also gets an honorable mention from me. One of the-
Yes.
I love movies that actually say I laughed my ass off at the
Distributed
theater.
by Walt Disney Studios.
Yeah.
and
I
20th
remember-
Century Fox.
I remember seeing it on
International.
look. I'm
Yeah.
a super collector of Blu-ray and DVDs.
That's how you
and
know
so
the back of that
on,
fucking
on
box.
release day for Bridge of Spies, I remember seeing it in a like Disney styled case, and I'm like, what is this stuff they're trying to peddle me? And I stayed away from Bridge of Spies, but you guys have convinced me otherwise.
I don't think
No,
it got
it's-
the same. I don't know attention that other stuff that they've done that has
Okay.
historical
It
context.
Didn't, man.
But
And it was so
man,
good.
it's
like
super
War
good.
Horse, because War Horse I think
I
is
don't-
Disney as well.
Yeah,
War Horse didn't get those. Did anyone see War Horse?
It was
I
Spielberg.
worked- No,
it's
I
a
listened-
horse movie. I watched
Spielberg,
it.
Disney.
You know, it-
No, I worked at Hastings at the time. Everybody was coming in for that damn movie. Everybody wanted to see War Horse.
You know what?
I need to catch up.
I have a hot take. I think Schindler's List was undercover Disney as well. They just didn't want to come out and say that it was. Anyways,
Possibly.
that's besides the point.
There's some mixed reasons why they
Yes,
wanted to
for sure.
attach themselves.
But it's Spielberg. It's historical, and
It's Hanks.
yeah, and it's a sensitive subject, of course. And I think Disney supported it and backed the production of it, and just didn't want to attach their names to it. But yeah, that's okay. Anyway, hot take. Spicy take.
The other honorable mention I have is the second Mockingjay. I mean, I wasn't disappointed in how it ended, and I often bitch
Nice.
so much about how they cock up the books. It was great, and then a very underrated movie. Some people didn't like it. Black Mass with Johnny Depp. Some people couldn't get over the way he looked. It's about Whitey Bulger, the
Black Mass, yeah.
Black
I was thinking
Mask.
Black Mask,
Oh,
which
sorry.
is Jet Li movie
No.
from like
Other
the
great
90s.
movie. No,
yeah, that
no.
is a
Black
pretty good movie.
Mass.
Weird
Yes.
title, but makes sense once you watch the movie.
Yeah, it does. There's some cringy moments in it though that are written so brilliantly. I fucking love this movie.
I forgot about that movie.
A lot of people did. A lot of people just sort of it was a semi-hit that a lot of people forgot about. I thought it was very, very underrated. I thought it was kind of misunderstood. A lot of people, like I said, couldn't get over the fact that Johnny Depp is buried underneath these creepy contacts and white hair. But it's an example.
But
of
they
how-
can deal with Jack Sparrow all day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
problem.
He's covered in grease and Keith Richards like fucking shit.
A lot of good people in the movie.
It's so
Yeah.
many good. Joe Edgerton,
It's a good gangster movie.
Benedict Cumberbatch, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
It's an all-star cast, and there's no
David
weak
Harbour.
link. Oh, David Harbour does it. He's in that movie. Fucking. Again, it's actually one of my favorite movies of the last decade.
Nice.
And it didn't end up on my number 1 or 2 because again it was just too.
And
hard
you couldn't
to
have a
fucking hear.
three-way tie, of
Yeah.
course.
I could. That's
No.
why I couldn't have a 3-way tie. I was going to be a 2-way tie between that and The Invitation,
Oh, okay.
but The Invitation surpassed it. It was the better movie.
Yeah, when you think about The Invitation, it's hard to when you revisit it, it's hard to exclude it.
It really is.
That's
I mean,
what I
it was going to be number 1, but then I was like, it can't touch Spotlight.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
So what's your honorable
Fair
mention, Center?
I actually have a few. This was a good year for me, I guess.
it was a good year.
My first one's gonna be The Danish Girl.
Oh, it's a fucking
Yeah,
I love that movie. I just
yeah.
thought about that movie.
It is
today.
very sad, but Eddie Redmayne is so good in it.
Incredible.
I don't know why you're making that face, but he is.
I'm
His
just
last name's
smiling.
Redmayne.
I
Did
think
you
you're reading
see-
a little too much into it.
Did you see the movie?
No.
It's really good. It's basically one of the transgender pioneers, and it's Eddie Redmayne and Alicia Vikander.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's so hot.
Like husband and wife.
Yeah, and
Couldn't have picked a better Tomb Raider for my
it's
taste.
true. I did like Tomb Raider. Yeah, so they're husband and wife, and their relationship is just really interesting already. And then I forget. I think they go to a party or something, and she convinces him to dress up as a woman to get into this party for some reason, and he discovers that he likes it, and he becomes, this transgender person, and just the struggles that come along with that, and she kind of sees what's happening, and their relationship changes over the course of it, and it's just a beautiful story. It's sad, and it's also an important story though, because this is based on an actual person that went through all of this. And
for context, remember this was a long time ago. This was set in the early 1900s, I think it is.
something like that. Yeah. This was very early on, and like she I guess at that point gets sent to like a sanitarium and is just sitting out on the side of this mountain in the snow trying to recover from surgery, and just trying to find a doctor that would even do surgery was a
19
yeah
20 something.
yeah and it's just a great story, and then the acting from everybody involved was stellar.
I think she won.
She might have. Yeah.
I think she won for that role.
Yeah, I don't remember. My other one, kind of in the same vein, sort of, is The Woman in Gold with
Yes!
Ryan Reynolds and Helen Mirren.
Such
yeah.
a good movie. We get to see him be serious.
Yes, yeah, it's a nice change of pace to see him, and they have really good chemistry. He's like an estate attorney or something, and there's this famous painting that was stolen from her family by the Nazis, and she's trying to recover it. And it's just the story and the struggles of this, going on.
He's almost unrecognizable, at least in terms of the Ryan Reynolds that we're used to.
Yeah, he really is, which I think is why I liked it so much, because it is so out of the norm for him these days, and he got to really kind of flex his acting muscles a bit.
Yeah, that was. I can't believe. Yeah, I missed it on my list. It would have definitely been on my list if I would have remembered it.
Right?
Such a good movie.
Oh, well, hopefully I don't have it on the wrong year, but anyway.
That's happened before.
Yes, it has.
And then my other, like I said, I have a few. Another one is going to be Krampus.
No.
Hey.
I love it.
Finally,
So,
something I could talk about.
there you go. So for years, Scrooged has been our Christmas movie. We watch it every year, and we still do. Yeah. But the last few years, Krampus has made that list too, because it's
Krampus.
just so fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horror movie on the surface, but it's so fucking funny, and I don't know. I just thought there was
There's
some
a
good
lesser,
performances.
so interesting tidbit. There's a Krampus-like movie called A Christmas Story, a Christmas horror story that came out in the same year,
yeah.
and it's almost a twin version of Krampus. So
Nice.
check that out if you haven't. Neither made my honorable mentions,
And
but
I
I'm glad
love
you put
Toni
Krampus
Collette
on there.
in that movie.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's got that guy I hate in it, but he's okay in this movie.
Right?
The guy who's dry comedian, very not my cup of tea comedian. What's his name? He's got a forgettable name too. He was in the second episode of The Twilight Zone, the
Adam
one in the
Scott?
plane. Yeah, that guy. Adam
You
Scott.
only hate him because Ramona was obsessed
Oh,
with him.
Adam, I do. Okay, so yeah, my wife's obsessed with him. But yeah, but at the same time, he's boring as fuck. I like
Fair
Jason
enough.
Momoa.
Hey, he was also in Black Mass too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Black Mask, the Jet Li.
yes,
Oh,
that
Black
one.
Mask.
he was the FBI agent.
Ugh.
Nice.
Yeah, he plays FBI agent in like 30 movies. He's
Right?
forgettable.
He is. So then I also have.
He's forgettable. Terrible.
Good God.
I gotta
You know,
diminish
Step
my
Brothers.
wife's crush.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough. I also have Kingsman as an honorable
Ah.
mention.
Ooh.
I was really surprised by this movie.
Yeah.
I did not expect it to be as fun as it was, and Samuel L. Jackson with a lisp is just hysterical. But I don't know. I really liked the movie.
Did you see the new
I did.
the trailer
yeah.
coming out?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
The King's
for
Man?
The King's
yeah.
Man. Yeah, that looks
And
dope.
I even liked the sequel.
Does
It
look
wasn't
good.
great, but I liked it.
Didn't see that one.
And then my last one is Cooties.
Ah,
It's-
borrowed this from someone.
Yep.
It's a good movie.
It is. It's super funny. It's sort of a zombie. Well, I mean, it is a zombie movie, I guess. But it's Elijah Wood and Allison Pill, I think is her name,
Yeah.
and Dwight. What is his name? Why can't I think of it?
Oh, Rainn Wilson.
Yes. So they're
Really?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll write it down.
It's so funny. So they're all teachers in this school, and Elijah Wood is either a substitute or a new teacher. I can't remember. And there's a chicken farm or something around there, and they produce a bad batch of chicken nuggets, and it causes this zombie outbreak with the kids at the school.
Fuck yes, I'm
And it is so funny.
But then it turns into like a hard R zombie
yeah,
movie to
yeah.
some
There's
degree.
some
Yeah.
there's some definitely brutal scenes in this movie, but it's so freaking funny for them trying to figure out how to navigate this.
Jack McBrayer.
Yeah, the cast is amazing, and towards the end of the movie, the parents start coming to pick up their kids, and they're like being like, no, don't come in, and they don't know
One of
what's
my
going
favorite
on.
scenes of the movie.
Yes, my favorite is the dual rear wheel discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Because now I can't say it. Rainn Wilson's character cannot say it, and he drives this giant truck with dual rear wheels, and he's like dual rear, just it's so funny. Exactly, yeah. And he's Rainn Wilson is the coach, and so he's given Elijah Wood's character shit the whole movie.
Oh my god.
And
yes.
it's just brilliant. So those are my long list of honorable
Good
mentions.
list. Yeah.
Especially because it's of October. Put that on my horror list.
I'm going to run through these
Yeah.
quickly. There's maybe one that I want to talk about a little more than 10 seconds. But I'm slightly disappointed because there's some favorite actors from some folks at this table in these movies, and none of them were mentioned. And, well, maybe Morgan would mention them. But I'm going to start with The Gift, which is starring Joel Edgerton and Jason Bateman.
Hard pass.
A hard pass on this? Okay. I liked it because I just like Bateman's character in this, and Joel Edgerton plays a really good psycho, and it was two roles outside of the norm of these two actors. And the premise is pretty cool too. But anyways, The Gift is the first one. The second one is starring Patrick Stewart, and this is The Green Room.
I still haven't seen it. That's why it's not on my list.
Oh, okay. It will be on your list of at least honorable mentions
It's
after you
Patrick
see it.
Stewart
Because
and Anton Yelchin.
yes, because Patrick Stewart plays a guy that you wouldn't envision Patrick
I
Stewart is
know. I
playing.
really want to see it, and I had intended to watch it before we did this podcast.
This is
but it
a
didn't happen.
this is a very bloody and gory horror movie that takes place in a dive bar and involves Nazi bikers. It's really good. And Patrick Stewart's like the chairman of this Nazi biker group. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Another movie I was surprised wasn't on many lists was Focus with Will Smith and Margot Robbie. Okay, I get it.
Man, there's a ton of movies this year.
There were a lot of movies. I get it. But this is another movie that, for the same reasons as the previous two, made my honorable mentions because it was a role that I was not expecting Will Smith to pull
Yeah, I
off.
love
And
Will Smith.
when I watched this movie, Will Smith was like on a slow streak to me in the early 2010s. And this movie,
He had kids.
he sort of hit his mark, and it was really cool to see the whole pickpocket world and magic and illusions and street magic and stuff. Anyways. Next up, Inside Out. We've already talked about that one. I've got The Hateful Eight, Chappie.
I had that one.
Oh, yeah, me
Hateful
too.
Eight was fun.
Yeah,
Chappie, actually.
Hateful Eight was a lot of fun. Chappie was a lot of fun, and I love Neil Blomkamp stuff. So I'm indebted to mentioning that because he's just one of the greatest sci-fi directors of our time, and I don't
For
think
sure,
he's done
yeah.
enough. He's only done 3 movies,
And all of his
and all of the
independent
shorts.
stuff that you guys haven't watched yet.
Yep. The movie that I'm going to highlight in this conversation is a horror movie that
Shocking.
not a lot of you guys have seen. Maybe Miguel's seen it. This is Southbound. Have you ever seen Southbound? All right. So, horror anthologies to me are what I want to see. Good horror anthology movies are what I want to see more from the horror genre. And Southbound is one of the best horror anthology movies I've ever seen. Top 3 easily. It opens up with this movie is I can't give away any of it other than the fact that it all these stories take place on a highway to hell, hence the title Southbound. So they're all like these diverging stories that take place in this universe, in this world that is sort of suffocated by evil. And there is some some images from this movie that have stuck with me for quite some time. Not because they're horrifying or just super scary, because they're so nice, beautiful to see in a horror movie. There's some cinematography in the first 20 minutes that I haven't seen from $100 million budget movies. And this movie had a very low budget and just got rave reviews on the horror cycle of horror review places. I think I learned from this, or I'm sorry, I learned about this movie from bloodydisgusting.com, which is like one of the horror sites that I frequent to see the stuff. Hey, you laugh, but bloodydisgusting.com has been around for quite some time. It's like the online version of Fangoria. So they reviewed this movie when it was on the festival circuits, and it just checked everything that I wanted to see in a horror anthology movie, and I love every second of it, and it's awesome. Southbound.
Nice.
Right. So I just kind of listening to everyone's also rants. It's kind of crazy. We didn't really all have as many in common as we did with the top movies. So that's kind of interesting. But I one of my also mentions is McFarland USA. That's the Kevin Costner film where he ends up going and doing the cross country thing. That might have made my top 3 if they hadn't gone away from the real life story so much. But still a good movie. It's one of those sports types movies where the kids who can't try real hard, and they do. Good little movie. The Martian was this year. I was a little surprised with all the space talk.
Wasn't 2016? It was 2015.
2015 Martian,
Martian
right?
was that year.
I really enjoyed The Martian.
I did too.
I thought that was a good one.
That came out in 2015?
Yeah.
Sure
For
did.
Sure did.
How the fuck did I miss that? That would've been on my list.
Yeah, Matt.
There was a lot of
Well, that's
movies
because-
that we made.
That's because we were hating Matt Damon for a while after Interstellar, and we weren't ready to see him in The Martian. And a year later, here he is.
So now we get to more movie that I just kind of more of a serious guilty pleasure. I wouldn't necessarily call these good movies, but I did like San Andreas.
No.
With The Rock, I liked it.
I couldn't
That
even
was
finish
fun.
it. No.
Uh,
I love The Rock, and I could not finish that movie.
No, we did, but we laughed the entire time.
yeah, I liked it. Last Witch Hunter.
I liked
Solid
that
movie.
one. I had it on my list, and then I marked it out.
Underrated.
But I
Yeah.
did enjoy it.
Jurassic World.
I did like the first one.
You're lucky I'm walking away on this.
I actually did like the first one.
I hate the first one.
Well,
Jurassic
well, that's all I'm gonna get out of you guys. Seriously, Jurassic World, and you guys aren't gonna.
You're not saying Fallen Kingdom, so I'm good.
Oh.
Get to there, and I'll give you some shit.
I agree.
I mean, of course you like Jurassic World. It was just like Jurassic Park. So
It was okay. Again, like maybe not great, but enjoyable. And then a couple of comedies. Oh, well, The Revenant was solid, but not one of the better movies for Leo. Did anybody watch that one? Enjoy that
I
one?
liked The Revenant. It was
Solid, but not. It just kind of lacked a little oomph, I guess.
It wasn't his best, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was. We
It's
liked it.
the one that finally got him an Oscar.
Oscar, ironically, that one of all things.
It should.
Well, the bear attack was pretty crazy scene, right?
Yeah, but it should have been the movie that
Yeah.
won him his first Oscar.
No,
Should've been.
The
Not
Beach,
at all.
Should've been.
What's Eating Gilbert
Stop
Grape?
it.
Right.
Titanic,
He
The
should've
Beach.
won 19.
I'd even give it to him for Titanic because I love that movie.
Yeah, I think Titanic would have been a good choice. I mean, shit, even Wolf on Wall Street, like he's nuts in that fucking movie.
No,
The whole drugged out scene was nuts.
He should have won for The Departed.
The Departed was definitely one he should have. Yeah.
Levels of actors
Yeah.
all over the place in a good way.
And
Yeah.
I'll finish on 2 comedies. Wedding Ringer, Kevin Hart. Anybody catch that one?
I don't think so. No.
Cut.
Is that?
Kind of funny. So Wedding Ringer, Kevin Hart plays this character that so guys who are getting married and don't have a lot of friends, they can rent Kevin Hart out essentially, and Kevin Hart will get him a bunch of friends and have a bunch of groomsmen and teach them how to dance and make them the center of attention.
Nice.
And it's a pretty funny movie as he's working with the guy who's getting married who doesn't have any friends. So it's pretty funny. There's a really funny scene in there with a dog and peanut butter. I'll leave it at that. And then Get Hard. That's like another
It
Kevin
is
Hart
actually
one.
pretty funny. Yeah.
And yeah. Will Ferrell. One of my favorite parts in that movie is when he's learning to keister items.
Yeah.
He's keistering shanks. That was a pretty funny little comedy.
I didn't
Welcome
get to
back.
shit on Jurassic World. Sorry.
It's okay.
But it's okay. I'm sure someone picked up the slack for me at the table. No,
No,
maybe
they
not
all
everybody
did.
liked Jurassic World.
Well, like I said, like everybody liked Jurassic World because it's just like a Jurassic Park. So
It's
if
okay.
you like
Okay, fair
I'm
Jurassic,
not
enough.
saying good movie.
It was
So,
definitely more.
I-
It was definitely more in tune with the core of why we liked
Yeah.
Jurassic Park
It
and
was,
the Lost
and like I
World.
said, I was totally on board with Jurassic World. When we get to Fallen Kingdom, we'll have issues.
Okay,
No, great movie.
and then in 3 years we can shit on
No.
Jurassic World 3.
yes,
Pretty
Well,
much, yeah.
just announced today they're bringing back the original cast.
Well-
Hopefully for longer than 5 fucking minutes.
Heather and I
We'll
were
see.
just talking about the
Right?
potential of this
You
movie.
didn't hear about that? They're bringing back the original
Yeah.
cast. Laura Dern, Sam Neill, and Jeff Goldblum are
That-
all coming back.
Well, they're not bringing them back for. It's not clear yet if it's for major roles. It's that they're
Right.
going to integrate
said it's
their
gonna be more
characters
than-
into the world.
Right.
Jeff Goldblum's cameo through fucking courtroom, hopefully.
Right. They said it's going to be more than that, but they haven't elaborated on what it's actually
Yeah,
gonna
and
be.
see, that's what I'm worried about. Like, don't just have them in there for 5 minutes. Like, don't do that. Like, have them in the movie. But we'll see. They'll
If you kill Dr. Grant and Dr. Statler,
Statler,
I
Yeah.
will be upset.
or
though I can't
even
remember.
Ian Malcolm. You know
Mhm.
what?
Well, yeah,
Like,
but I'm convinced that he's immortal, so I'm good. Also, Jeff Goldblum.
it is Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, he'll live forever.
Yep.
All right.
So
That
yeah,
wraps up
2015 was a
2015.
good year. I
It
think.
was a
wraps-
deep
yeah.
year for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
There's
A lot of
good
important
choices.
stories.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like a lot of true stories, like Spotlight, Big Short.
Ex Machina.
It became true later.
Ex Machina is a true story.
No, I was thinking of hers. The Woman in Gold. That's based off a true story.
Yeah.
Sicario.
Like, Sicario. Stop
The
it.
Danish
That's a
Girl.
drug
I guess-
war.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
I think Zombievers came out in this year.
yeah.
And
That might be one of your true stories.
Right? And that's a good time to cut.
Yeah, and cut. And scene.